4:30, cocaine. 4:54, cocaine. 5:05, cocaine. Good and evil are the same thing, just like God and devil are the same thing. Wow. Hello, everyone. Okay, so we can hear what we are saying. Welcome to today's podcast. Welcome to my show, What I Should Show, I like to call it. Um, the reason why I'm not wearing my headphones is because I'm using a USB mic, and I have come to find out that if you try to record a podcast while simultaneously listening to yourself, there is this huge delay that sounds exactly the same as if you had demons inside your head. As you can probably see, me, I have kind of shifted the studio a little bit so that I can be positioned directly in front of you and have the mic in my face while simultaneously looking at my laptop. And if you haven't noticed already, I am dressed a little bit different today. We are feeling very experimental. I have heard that there's this guy, I forget who it was, but there's some guy that does podcasts like really late at night. Like I'm in Vietnam right now in the heart of Saigon, and it's 1:52 a.m. So it's very late. You can't probably, but I can still hear very loudly the Bui Vien Street outside of me, while there is 100 different tunes playing. It's not even a tiny bit distracting to me because I have been on Bui Vien for so long that I have learned to sleep in this mess. And as I said, today's outfit is inspired by Hunter S. Thompson, actually, one of my favorite people on the planet, despite the insanity. But I actually wanted to start off with, and for those of you that don't know who Hunter S. Thompson is, he's the inventor of, he's a journalist that invented the style of gonzo. And the best way I could describe gonzo to everybody is, let's say if you go to he used to go to a horse racing thing, and normally when journalists would go to a horse racing event, they would say what happened on the field, who won, etc. But when Hunter went to a horse racing event, he wouldn't be looking at the field. He would be looking at who was in the stands and the frustration and the emotions hidden within people and the kind of individuals that went there. So that was super interesting. And I actually wanted to start off this episode by reading you his world famous routine before writing. So here we go. 3 p.m. Rise. 3:05 Shivas with the morning papers. Dunhills. 3:45 Cocaine. 3:50 Another glass of Shivas. Dunhill. 4:05 First cup of coffee. Dunhill. 4:15 Cocaine. 4:16 Orange juice. Dunhill. 4:30 Cocaine. 4:54 Cocaine. 5:05 Cocaine. 5:11 Coffee Dunhills. 5:30 more ice with Chivas. 5:45 Cocaine, etc., etc. 6 Grass to take the edge of the day. 7:05 Woody Creek Tavern for lunch. Heineken, 2 margaritas, coleslaw, a taco salad, a double order of fried onion rings, carrot cake, ice cream, a bean fried fritter, Dunhills, another Heineken, cocaine, and for a ride home, a snow cone, which was a glass of shredded ice over which is poured 3 or 4 jiggers of Chivas. 9. Start snorting cocaine seriously. 10. Drops acid. 11. Charties, cocaine, grass. 11:30. Cocaine, etc., etc. 12. Midnight. Hunter is ready to ride. 12:05 to 6 a.m. Charties, cocaine, grass, Shivas, cocaine, Heineken, clove, cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, gin, continuous pornographic movies. 6 o'clock in the morning. The hot tub champagne, Dove bars, fettuccine alfredo, 8 o'clock, Hailcon, 8:20, sleep. Wow. Okay. So as I was saying, there's this guy that records podcasts really late at night because he doesn't do any drugs and he doesn't take anything, but he has come to figure out that there is something magical about our brain and the state that we go into at night. So I was like, I really wasn't going to do this. I have been struggling with audio issues all day, and I've been trying to figure out to set up everything. And then I was like, you know what? I really don't want to do this, which is exactly why I'm gonna do it. Because it's just an experimental little solo cast for the moment. I actually have a guy coming in tomorrow to shoot a podcast. I just shot another third podcast that unfortunately won't be on my YouTube page because I was a guest on someone else's podcast. My friend Stephanie runs a podcast, and she wanted to have me on since she noticed I am doing my own. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Okay, we have the Hunter S. Thompson quotes that I wanted to start off with. So it goes as such. I hate to advocate drugs, alcohol, violence, or insanity to anyone, but they have always worked for me. And I love this quote. I have this quote up on my wall in the bar, and people love it, Like when you are putting quotes in a bar, like sure you could go with like a lot of motivational stuff and whatever, but I don't think that people come to the bar want to be looking at things that improve their life too much. Like there's a lot of normal people that go to the bar, but there's also like you have to be good at reading the room and you have to be adjusting to the audience a little bit, even though it authentically speaks to me, I'm sure it would speak to more people. And, that's, I feel like sometimes you have to give people what they want to hear. But that's not all I do. Unfortunately, I am also a motivational geek when it comes to things, and I write things for myself as well as others, mainly for myself. But there's a lot of cool little reminders that I have in the bar. I should do a little like a video of all the things that I have written down over the past year on the walls because I literally ran out of space, like physical space on the walls and everywhere. I have just absolutely covered the bar in everything. It's like I like to call it a reflection of my brain, even though not everything I write is mine. It's everything that I pay attention to, and it speaks to me enough to actually go out and share it with other people. Yeah. So there's another quote here. Sex, drugs, and insanity have always worked for me, but I wouldn't recommend them for everyone. And I agree with this. And as a tangent from this, I actually want to talk about something that I shared recently. I heard this on, you probably heard this on many other podcasts. I don't know what you guys are listening to. I'm not even sure who you guys are at the moment. I am looking for my people. So anybody doesn't like this podcast and the way it's going, it's going to improve. But if you don't like it already, you don't have to listen. Over time, I'm gonna find people that want to listen to this podcast, and that's who I want to keep here. So, if you do not like this podcast, then I am super happy for you. You have found one more thing that you don't like, and you can go ahead and find other things that you actually do like. You are one less thing from figuring out what you actually do like. So, thank you. Okay. And the parable I just mentioned, I completely forgot for a second, was about psychedelics specifically. As you can tell from the outfit, I do not always wear this, but when I do wear this, everybody automatically assumes that I dabble in some psychedelics, and they would be correct. Actually, all I draw is very psychedelic related things, and I have actually, um, when I was wearing this shirt, everybody kept telling me I look exactly like my wall in a bar, and then I was like, oh, if the police comes, I'm just gonna like blend in with the wall. And I'll show you a picture right here somewhere of how that looked, and it was actually incredible. Like I completely blended in with the wall. Like if somebody came in, they would obviously see me, but if you zoom in on the way I have in the photos, you literally can't see me. So that was cool. And before I go into my whole tangent about psychedelics and enlightenment and a Buddha story, I would like to tell you how I got this shirt because it's I actually didn't buy this shirt. There was a guy that came to my bar, Australian guy came to my bar, and he was wearing this shirt, and I told him, "Bro, that is a sick shirt." And he obviously liked that compliment. And then later, when he finished drinking, he was like, "You know what, bro? I actually have two of these shirts, and one is too small for me. And so I'm gonna come back tomorrow, and I'm gonna give it to you." Which is awesome. It actually gave it to someone who appreciated the shirt. And it's like that whole thing you hear in like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Like that happens a lot, like the whole story about a guy going to a lady's home, old lady's home, and then seeing a cool car outside and telling her how much he appreciates that car, and he told her all the things he knows about the car, and then she's like, actually, I'm gonna give it to you, and he tried to refuse to take it, but she was like, no, my whole family's just waiting for me to die, and they won't appreciate it. They just want the money, and I'm not gonna give it to them. I'm gonna give it to you. And you'd be surprised how much you can get through being kind to people. Like there's so many people that are just absolute dickheads, and it just gets you nowhere. Like you just burn one bridge after another, and eventually you end up burning all the necessary bridges for your own survival, and you end up on the streets. And that's why sometimes I walk by people on the street that are begging and or drunkies, and I wonder, how did you get here? Because there's a very specific pattern you have to follow. Like, sure, something terrible could have happened to you, and you already didn't have parents, and you could have ended up there. But some people also could have ended up there because they had amazing parents, amazing support, amazing friends, and then they got into drugs and they borrowed money first from friends, and then they refused to pay them back, so their friends told them to go away, be nice, and cut all friendship with them. And eventually, they went to their family, they borrowed money from their family, then their family wouldn't give them any more money because they realized what they were doing, so they started stealing, let's say, from the family. And after that, the family had to make a huge decision about we have to let this guy go because he's dragging all of us down. You can't help him. He refused to be helped and he has to go. And as painful as it is, that is the reality for most people on the streets. So yeah, that's a pretty sad one. Okay, let's go back to psychedelics and enlightenment. And people argue that you can get enlightened without psychedelics. And I completely agree. That was my initial approach. Back in the day, you meditate, you do Wim Hof, do all these meditation retreats and things like that. And it works for some people. But meditation, actually, when I used to meditate a lot, I used to be more angry because there's this thing that happens when you meditate, especially right after you meditate sometimes. Because when you meditate and you get really at peace, you think you solved all your problems and now you're chilling. But like life, you go back into living life, and very, very quickly, there's people around you that press all the right buttons and you blow up. Like there's this whole story about a monk that went, or a guy that went to the Himalayas and he became a monk and he became enlightened. And then he came back to his family after years and he was nothing ever annoyed him anymore. He was completely chill. And then as his dad picks him up from the airport, they're driving back home and his dad goes to him, so when you gonna get the job? And then he blows up in fury because it's easy to be at peace when you go to these meditation retreats and things for a week, and there is no distractions and nobody's annoying you. Everybody's chill on the same vibe, frequency, whatever. But then you go back into normal life, and I have heard, I don't know how true this is. Let me research this. I have heard that people have killed themselves after they came back from these meditation retreats because the life is just so annoying. Let's say people killing themselves after meditation retreats. I would like to just mention that I don't know why I have this weird anxiety as I'm doing this video. Like I just want to finish this podcast, but every time I did it up to now, which wasn't too many times, but I always feel like I'm cutting it short. Let's see what minute I'm on now. I'm on minute 12 already. Okay, that's cool. Two Americans killed themselves on Zen meditation retreats. Silent meditation retreats under scrutiny after free spirit. Meditation can have dangerous effects on mental health. Wow. The dark side of silent meditations. Okay, so people even commit suicide while on these meditations. That's crazy. Lost in thought. Okay, so that's that. I don't even want to go into too much about that, but I want to go into the story of a guy that went. There's this very famous Buddhist story about the guy who went and he meditated for 30 years. And then he comes back to his master and he's like, Master, I can walk on water. And he's like, his master is like, you spent 30 years learning to walk on water? Why, when the ferry is only $1? You're a dumbass. Like, and that's the whole comparison with psychedelics is because you can get enlightened without them, but it's just so much easier eat with them because they just strip away. You have to deal with so much of your shit because you don't realize how much bullshit is piled up on you. Like you have all these patterns that you do and you don't even know why you do them. And psychedelics can really help you find out what that is and why you behave the way you behave. I haven't done like ayahuasca and things like that. I've talked to people that do, and I've recently realized that a lot of the people that have to go to that extent to get to live a normal life have a lot of weird problems. And I'll probably like those people more. Like I've never met somebody that's like already settled. Have you ever met anybody that's already like good with everything? That's not dealing with more past shit. Because you can fall into this cycle where you start doing psychedelics with like a good intention of like finding out what's wrong with you and like how to improve yourself and etc. And then you can actually fall into this pattern of like shining the light on the dark places that perhaps you shouldn't be shining the light on, because like essentially you're like where you place your focus. Like if you focus on your problems become bigger. It's like, did you ever like stub your toe and just like focus on the pain and like you're sitting there and like you're just suffering. Whereas sometimes I like to stub my toe or bang my knee or whatever and just keep walking and pretend like it didn't happen, and the pain goes away much faster. You have to watch where you like place your attention because that's all you really have. Like you are a being that takes in light, and while you decipher reality with this, your brain deciphers everything by the light you take in and the image that you project. There's like the things that you focus on, like that will. What am I trying to say here? I think I already said it and I'm trying to say it again. If you focus on your problems, then they're going to become bigger. Another trick I have read in Anthony de Mello's awareness was how to distance yourself from your problems. And it was a very simple trick. And it started with the question, who am I? And you realize that I am my name, let's say. And then they say to you, you are not your name. You are I. And everybody is I. Everybody calls themselves I, myself. But then they have a name. So you cannot say, who am I? And then say your name. Because you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. And then you have to realize that you're both the observer and the thinker in a way. But like you're sometimes you get these intrusive thoughts and it's not necessarily your thoughts. Like thoughts supposedly come in from the outside. They have found this out with, I don't know if it was quantum or whatever. If you don't know how to explain something, usually insert the word quantum and it solves all your problems. But they used to think that thoughts are inside your head because they used to have a machine that goes on top of your head. So while they were reading things from your head, they were like, oh, but it must be inside the head. But then that was when they were using the thing that they put on your head. But then they found out like that they found a new method of measuring this, and it was a magnetic field measurement thing. And then they realized that your thoughts are actually coming from out here. And there's this beautiful idea that I heard that a belief is not an idea that the mind possesses, but an idea that possesses the mind. That there is like this super esoteric, like there's like this universal consciousness that we all share, and ideas just try to possess people. Like sometimes people at the same time. Like, did you ever like come up with something and it was a super original idea and you researched it and somebody like made a post about it like 2 weeks ago? Yeah, so that happens. What else can we brag about at this time? It's 2:09 in the morning. We are approaching minute 17:30, and my camera records for 30 minutes. Although I have recently, which is today, a few hours ago, found out that you can actually increase the limit on the Sony camera by adjusting a few settings and downloading an app. So I'm gonna try to do that so I can have longer episodes. But the reason I am doing this episode is because there might be some little parts that I say that I could cut up in the clips, and even if the podcast itself is not good enough, then perhaps there would be like a nice cool little clip. Because in today's day and age, you figure out that it's actually hard to get discovered when you do a podcast if you do not have a video component. Because if like, how often do you share a podcast that that's just audio? You know, like usually how you even find a podcast is everybody scrolling on reels, on shorts, and then you find the conversation, a little snippet from a conversation, and then you're like, oh, I wonder what else they talked about, and you go into that. So video, like you have to take advantage of the biggest search engine in the world, or the second biggest, I'm not even sure, which is YouTube. So you need a video component. So I actually refuse to just do an audio podcast. And some people are frustrated that you have to like add the whole video. They want to do just like radio audio podcast, and that's cool. And I listen to a lot of those on Spotify also, but usually hard to find them. You have to be very niche if you want to do that, because that's how people find you. You know, yeah, niches get you riches, they say. And I am right now not really niching down to anything. I am just speaking my mind, and I'm trying to see perhaps maybe what resonates with the audience more, what they want to hear more about. Like this one thing I always forget to say, which is what would you like to hear me talk about in the next podcast? Yeah, that's the question I have for everybody. Like, what would you like me to say to you or for you? What would you like me to go into? You know, because until you say that, I am just gonna continue doing what I like to do, which is have a random stream of consciousness just come out of my mouth at 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, actually, we got some news today from the police in Vietnam, and it looks like I'm getting deported soon. So that sucks, obviously, but it doesn't suck all the way. Like I tried to explain this on the podcast I was recently on, that you might think that something like like a deportation from this place, which is amazing, is gonna suck, but you're gonna go. I'm gonna go to Poland. I'm gonna go to meet my friend in Norway, which was one thing actually that when I go into this whole situation I had with the police here. Sorry, mom, I didn't tell you about all this. This whole situation I had with the police showed me who has my back when I need it, you know? And there was one friend specifically, shout out to you, Carol, that I actually met the first time. He used to live on or the same estate as me when I still used to live in Poland, because I moved from Poland to Ireland when I was 12 years old. And he was like the first or second guy that I've ever seen do a backflip. And like for a kid, because I used to do free running, and he was like the guy that even brought it to like the estate, because he went somewhere else and he seen the guys do it, and he like brought it to us, and instantly click with me. I was like 9 years old when I started doing this, and I did it until like 21, or maybe even like to be honest, I still use it to this day. Like I think free running is like the most beautiful thing to go into, because it shows you how to move your body, and it translates into a lot of sports. Like even when I started jujitsu with my brother at 14, I did it for 2 months when I was 14. Then I went back to it when I was 19. But the coach said like, "Oh, you guys move different, you know, because kids come in and they can't move." Like one thing free running definitely teaches you is like how to move your body, and especially how to fall, because you realize you're not really scared of doing something, you're scared of doing something and falling. And when you like figure out how to fall, how to control your body even when you mess up, then that allows you the freedom to actually go out and try different things and not be scared to try them, you know. And I mentioned this example a lot in regards to talent and free running and really any other endeavor. My brother used to be really talented at weird things, like solving the Rubik's Cube, chess he really got into, and then free running he started with me obviously when we were young. And there was this thing I noticed when I was about 18 years old, that me and my other friend Bart would be like trying to make a jump from like a higher plane to a lower bar, and you had to stick it to land it, and we would be there for hours just like calculating and doing we would have like a little process of progression. You would like try to jump next to it, try to jump on it and bounce off, little things like lower your head so it looks like it's lower than it actually is. And my brother would just come over if he seen us do it, and he would flip his hat back, put a cigarette on the side of his mouth, look at it, and just do it. But then what I also noticed is that Some things came really easy to him, but when things got hard, he didn't really want to try it. He had no like systematic way of achieving something if he couldn't do it right away. And if you look at like if you look at any gymnast, really, if you go into any gymnastics school or whatever you call them, gym, you realize that it's all progressions. They have progressions from kids that are 2 years old to elite level. And you just continue this. You never just go into something and try it for the first time. You always progress bit by bit by bit, and you master different elements until you can just do it perfectly. And I think that's the best way to go about things. Just slow progressions. Or not, only if you're talented, you can start higher, but you need somebody to actually explain to you how to work hard. Because talent is hard to beat, but it's easy to beat when talent doesn't work hard. Because eventually, somebody with a systematic process that doesn't rely on their strengths they have at the moment, they are building towards something that's gonna set them apart in the future. Like Kobe used to say, that people that used to just rely on strength, they used to be winning because they were bigger and taller than him, would later just get crushed because he was there working different elements of basketball, and eventually they couldn't stand up to him at all, despite still being taller. You see that a fighting gyms, people just rely on brutality and things, and then there is this one guy, nerdy geek, even in jiu-jitsu, that systematically progresses, and then eventually you just cannot deal with him because he has found a way to get to you despite your size advantage and things like that. And size helps. I rather be bigger when I do jiu-jitsu, and I rather be smaller when I do striking. And even when I'm bigger when I do striking, I rather spar with people that are bigger than me because they're slower and dumber usually. I don't know what it is about size, but probably not everybody. Like John Jones is not dumb. If you're smart and you're that big and you're that lanky and use it to your advantage, then it's really, really hard to deal with. So yeah, just went on a huge tangent there. Okay, I think I'm gonna. What are we on? We're on 25 minutes. I think we're gonna cut it here. But before we cut it here, I am going to load up the recent stuff I've been posting on Facebook because I think it's cool, and that's what I'm gonna do. How do you open Facebook easier? Boom, boom. That was too easy. Come on, internet. Let's do something. Yeah, so this is like the first podcast that I literally didn't prepare for. I didn't write anything for myself on the board like I usually do, so I can like think of different ideas to go to. But then I find that I don't necessarily know how to transition well between those ideas, probably because I don't prepare enough before these podcasts. I just kind of try to write a few things down. Yeah. So we have a quote from Duncan Trussell about something super profound. If you are one of these guys that watches the news and constantly talks about the news and you live in fear, this one is for you. Some poor phoneless fool is probably sitting next to a waterfall somewhere, totally unaware of how angry and scared he's supposed to be. Think about that, folks, before you go to bed tonight. Here is the picture I was talking about. Oh, in the book I was talking about in the last podcast about information, I have found that the role of information is an attempt to represent reality, and if this attempt succeeds, we call it truth. However, you have to find out that most information that we are exposed to is not an attempt to represent reality. So you have to ask yourself, what is it then? And it's basically a tool to steer the narrative. That's what propaganda is. You expose yourself to information, and I hear people at the bar talking about like all this shit that's going on, and I'm like, where? Show me all this suffering you're talking about. And sometimes it's abroad or whatever, things like that happen. But nothing is truly good and bad, despite how absolutely horrendous it looks. You, it's really horrible for people that are in that situation. But I've been on trips where I literally cried about things like that when I realized how much suffering there is and that people are dying and people are getting bombed. But then, after I was done thinking about the bad side of things, I realized how blessed I am for not having to deal with that. So that's the tiny little bit of good that's in the massive amount of bad that some people on the other side of the planet come back home and hug their kids because they see somebody else's kids bombed. And as tragic as that sounds, that's what it is. Like you cannot have good without bad. And also, good and evil are the same thing, just like God and devil are the same thing. Because when you are late for a bus and you're supposed to take that bus to go to school or go to a very important meeting, you blame the devil, let's say, for if you're a Christian, you blame the devil for making you late. But if you found out, or a plane, actually, it would be a better example. If you had to catch a plane to go see your family for Christmas, but then you didn't make it, you would blame the devil for making you late. But if you realize that that plane crashed, you would thank God. Funny that, huh?